never thought I'd be the one paying for my brother's wedding. But that's what happened last month, and sometimes I still wonder how I let myself get talked into it. My name is Charlotte Hayes. I live in a quiet town called Willow Springs, just outside Denver, Colorado. I've always liked the peacefulness here, the gentle hum of life, the way the mountains glow at sunset. My life isn't flashy, but it's mine. Or at least I thought it was. My brother Benjamin is 3 years younger than I growing up. He was the golden child in my mother's eyes. If he so much as tied his shoes, Mom would call it genius. Meanwhile, I learned to do things quietly, without praise or expectation. Benjamin was always laughing, always finding trouble, always knowing that somehow Mom would rescue him. Even as adults, not much changed. When Ben decided to marry Olivia, a woman as charming as she is clever, everyone seemed to agree without question that I would help pay for the wedding. I heard about it one evening while visiting Mom's old white house on Oak Street. It was supposed to be a quick dinner, but my family is never quick about anything. The house was just as I remembered it. Faded paint, creaky floorboards, a heavy smell of Mom's lavender candles. I arrived with a bottle of wine, hoping it would keep things light. Mom had made her usual Sunday roast, and Ben was already there with Olivia, laughing over some inside joke. After dinner, when the plates were cleared, Mom poured herself a cup of tea and settled in. That's when she looked me in the eyes, her gaze as sharp as ever. "You know you'll help your brother." "It's what family does," she said, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. At first, I thought she was joking. I even laughed and looked at Ben for some kind of confirmation that this was just a test. But he avoided my gaze, suddenly very interested in his phone. Olivia just smiled at me, that sweet but slightly nervous smile she wears when she wants something. The room felt colder all at once, even with the candles burning. I hesitated, but I could see that everyone was waiting. I don't know if it was out of habit or guilt or maybe just exhaustion, but I agreed. I said yes, even though I could feel the knot in my stomach tighten. I told myself it was only money, and that I could afford to help. After all, isn't that what older sisters are supposed to do? The wedding plans began almost immediately. Within a week, I was fielding calls about venues, photographers, flower arrangements, and a guest list that kept growing. Willow Springs isn't a big town, but word travels fast. Everyone seemed to know that Charlotte Hayes was footing the bill for her brother's big day. Some people called it generous. Others just assumed I was doing what a good daughter should. I tried not to care what people thought, but it was hard not to notice the looks at the bakery, the whispers in the supermarket. Ben and Olivia decided to have the wedding at Mom's house. It's not a mansion, but it has a big backyard, and in summer the roses bloom along the fence. We hired a tent, rented tables and chairs, and strung up lights from the old apple tree to the porch. Every time a new bill came in, I told myself it would be worth it. The dress fittings, the band, the endless stream of just one more thing, requests, it all piled up in my inbox and my bank account. I kept track of every dollar spent, watching the number go down, telling myself it was almost over. Despite everything, the wedding itself was beautiful. The house was full of laughter and music. Friends and family traveled from as far as New York and even London. Olivia's parents flew in from Boston, and Ben's old college roommate, Simon, came in from Paris, stopping by New York first. I smiled through it all, trying not to think about the money leaving my savings account. For one day, the house felt magical. The tent glowed with soft yellow lights, the food was delicious, and people danced until midnight. I watched Ben and Olivia twirl around the dance floor, and I wondered if they had any idea what it had cost me, not just in money, but in pride. Mom was in her element that night. She wore her favorite blue dress, poured champagne for everyone, and toasted to family. More than once, I caught her giving me a knowing look, as if to say, "See, this is what we do for each other." I wanted to believe her. I wanted to think that maybe, in her way, she was grateful. But in the end, I felt more alone than ever. I sat on the porch after midnight, feet aching, dress rumpled, watching the stars above the mountains. I wondered how many more times I would be asked to put myself second just for the sake of family. As the guests said their goodbyes and the last cars pulled away, I helped Mom gather empty glasses and stack plates in the kitchen. She was humming to herself, still smiling. Ben and Olivia disappeared upstairs, tired and happy. I lingered in the quiet kitchen for a moment, looking at the pile of receipts on the counter. I wanted to ask Mom if she'd ever really see me, not just as Ben's sister or her reliable daughter, but as someone who mattered in her own right. But I said nothing. I washed the last glass and slipped out into the night, my heart heavy. That was the night I realized the cost of family wasn't just dollars and cents. It was measured in all the times I'd put myself last, all the times I'd said yes when I wanted to say no. But for now, I told myself, the wedding was over. I could finally rest. I had no idea that my troubles had only just begun. The morning after my brother's wedding, everything felt strangely quiet. The echoes of laughter, music, and clinking glasses from the night before were gone, replaced by a heavy stillness that seemed to fill every corner of my small blue room. Sunlight crept in through the old lace curtains, casting delicate patterns across the rumpled sheets. I lay there for a while, listening to the muffled sounds of birds outside and trying to convince myself that the stress was finally over. I'd done my part. The wedding was a success. Ben and Olivia were happy, and Mom could tell her friends how wonderful everything had been. But even as I lay there, I felt unsettled. There was a knot of worry low in my stomach, the kind you can't quite explain but can't ignore either. Maybe it was just exhaustion. Or maybe it was the feeling that, despite everything, I would still never quite belong in my own family. Pushing those thoughts aside, I reached over to my bedside table and picked up my phone. My plan was simple: check my emails, maybe scroll through some photos from the wedding, and finally, almost as an afterthought, take a look at my bank account. I entered my passcode, blinking the sleep from my eyes. I knew my savings would be lower. The past month had been a blur of expenses: flowers, food, decorations, even a last-minute cake upgrade. I wasn't looking forward to seeing the number, but I wanted to get it over with. When the screen loaded, my heart stopped. I stared, then blinked, then stared again, certain there had been a mistake. My balance was lower than I expected. Much lower. In fact, $12,000 was missing, gone without a trace. Not just the money I'd agreed to spend on the wedding, but far more. It was like a hole had opened up under my feet. For a long moment, I just sat there, phone in hand, mind racing. I scrolled through the transactions, looking for an answer. There were charges I didn't recognize, withdrawals and payments I had never approved. My hands began to shake. I'd always been careful with my money, ever since college. I kept my passwords private, never gave anyone access to my accounts. But someone had gotten in. Someone had taken what didn't belong to them. Panic twisted in my chest as I threw on yesterday's jeans and a sweatshirt. My hair was still wild from sleep, but I didn't care. I hurried down the narrow stairs, phone clutched tightly in my hand, anger rising with every step. The kitchen was warm and filled with the smell of coffee. Mom was sitting at the old wooden table, her back straight, her favorite mug in her hands. She looked up as I entered, her mouth curling into a knowing smile. Next to her, Benjamin and Olivia sat close together, both of them staring at the screen of Ben's phone, whispering to each other. I tried to keep my voice steady, but it trembled with fear and disbelief. "Mom, did you take more money from my account?" The words felt foreign, as if someone else was speaking through me. My mother's smile widened, her eyes sparkling with something sharp and cold. She laughed loud and sharp, echoing off the kitchen walls. "You're powerless now, Charlotte. You can't stop us." Her words cut deeper than I expected. There was no apology, no hint of guilt, just the simple, matter-of-fact tone she always used when she knew she had won. Ben and Olivia didn't say a word. They kept their heads down, as if embarrassed, or maybe just unwilling to face me. I waited, hoping for some sign that this was all a misunderstanding. Maybe Ben had borrowed the money by mistake, or maybe Olivia had accidentally used my card for a purchase. But the silence dragged on. Mom just sipped her coffee, looking out the window as if nothing important had happened. The realization hit me all at once: this wasn't a mistake. They knew exactly what they had done. The kitchen felt smaller, almost suffocating. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, my breaths coming fast and shallow. I looked at Benjamin, searching for a flicker of regret, but he just looked away. Olivia picked at a napkin, eyes wide but empty. My family, the people who were supposed to protect me, had stolen from me, and they didn't care. My hands fumbled through the contents: my passport, a stack of bills I'd forgotten to deposit, my phone charger, a pack of tissues. I needed to get out, to clear my head, to figure out what to do next. I paused in the hallway just for a moment, the weight of everything pressing down on my shoulders. I looked back at my so-called family, my voice steady this time. You think this is over? Think again. My words hung in the air, sharp and full of promise. All three of them, Mom, Benjamin, and Olivia, laughed like it was all a big joke, like I was just a silly girl who didn't understand how things worked. I stood on the porch, taking deep breaths, trying to calm the storm inside me. I had always believed in family, always tried to do the right thing, but now I saw how little that mattered to them. I was on my own. I didn't know what I would do next or where I would go. Part of me wanted to run, just disappear and never look back. I still had my wits, my independence, and enough money in my bag to get by for a while. Maybe that was all I needed. The laughter from the kitchen still echoed in my ears as I stood on the porch, shivering in the cool Colorado air. My heart thudded against my ribs, half from anger, half from a growing sense of helplessness. I tried to steady myself, gripping my handbag as if it could somehow anchor me. The bright morning sun should have felt hopeful, but instead it glared down, harsh and cold, washing the world in white light. Inside, I could still hear their voices: Mom's high, triumphant laugh, Ben's deeper chuckle, Olivia's quiet giggle. I felt like a stranger outside my own childhood home. I took a few steps away from the door, trying to breathe, to focus on the steady rise and fall of my chest. Just as I considered leaving, the world shifted in a single, shattering moment. A crash exploded from inside the house. My body froze. The laughter inside stopped instantly, replaced by the jagged silence of shock. I turned, driven by instinct, and ran back to the front door. It swung wide open as I reached it, its hinges screaming. I stepped into the entryway, pulse hammering in my ears. Standing in the center of the room, framed by the broken door, was a man. He looked older than I remembered, but there was no mistaking him. Daniel Rhodes, my late father's closest friend, all the way from England, stood there, broad-shouldered and imposing, his gray hair rumpled from travel, his eyes sharp and serious behind wire-rimmed glasses. The room seemed to shrink around him. Sunlight glinted off the fragments of a vase he'd accidentally knocked from the table. Mom, Ben, and Olivia stared at him, their faces caught halfway between fear and outrage. No one moved. "Everyone sit down," he commanded, not shouting but not asking either. There was something in his tone that left no room for argument. My mother's face drained of color. Ben's mouth fell open. Olivia clutched Ben's arm, her eyes darting from Daniel to me and back again. He'd visited a few times over the years, always bearing thoughtful gifts: a painted tin from London, an illustrated book of English gardens, a silver charm from my bracelet.
He and my father, Michael Hayes, had met in Europe before Dad moved to America, and they'd stayed close even after distance made their visits rare.
After Dad died, Daniel sent a letter every Christmas, always addressed to me. I never really known why he kept in touch, but at that moment, I was grateful for his presence. Daniel's eyes settled on me, full of warmth and concern. "Charlotte," he said softly, "are you all right?" I nodded, unable to find my voice, relief mingling with confusion. Mom tried to collect herself, squaring her shoulders as if she could regain control by sheer willpower. "Daniel, what is the meaning of this? You can't just barge into my house!" Her voice shook, betraying her nerves. Ben stepped forward, puffing himself up, but Daniel silenced him with a look. "I'm here because Michael wanted me to be," Daniel said, addressing the whole room but looking directly at me. "Charlotte, your father left you something. It's time you learned the truth." A chill swept through me, though the house was warm. Dad had died 5 years ago, and I thought all his affairs were settled life insurance. A modest savings account, the old fishing gear in the garage. What truth could possibly be left? I looked at Daniel, searching his face for some hint, but his expression remained gentle, almost apologetic. Mom bristled. This is nonsense. Michael didn't have anything left to give. It all went to support this family, to pay for the house, for Ben's college, for... Daniel cut her off with quiet authority. With all due respect, Judith, you know that isn't true. He reached into his coat and withdrew a thick, weathered envelope, sealed with deep red wax. My name was written on the front in my father's careful handwriting, Charlotte Grace Hayes. Something inside me shifted. I stepped forward, my hand trembling slightly as Daniel placed the envelope in my palm. It was heavier than I expected, and the wax seal was unbroken. For a moment, the room felt impossibly still, as if time itself had stopped. Olivia gasped, breaking the silence. "What is that?" she whispered. Ben glared at Daniel, then at me, his jaw clenched tight. Mom said nothing, her eyes fixed on the envelope with a mix of fear and fury. Daniel turned to them, his voice firm. "This was entrusted to me by Michael. No one was to open it except Charlotte. I promised him I would come if anything ever seemed wrong." He glanced at me, and I saw sadness in his eyes. The envelope trembled in my hands as I sat down on the faded green sofa. I peeled away the wax seal and opened it carefully, almost afraid of what I might find. Inside was a stack of documents and a letter written in my father's familiar, looping script. I read the letter first, eyes stinging with tears as his voice came alive in my mind. "My dearest Charlotte," it began, "I know that sometimes life with your mother and brother is hard. I wish I could have protected you more, even from a distance. This is my way of making sure you have what you need and what you deserve. No one else can touch this money. I left it for you, in both dollars and pounds, in accounts you alone can access. If Daniel is reading this to you, it means the time has come." By the time I finished, my hands were shaking. Daniel explained quietly, filling in the blanks. My father had set up a trust in my name, protected by layers of legal safeguards. The money was substantial enough to make the loss from my account seem small, enough to change my life. But more than that, it was a message. Dad had seen what I could not, or would not, admit, that my family would never truly have my best interests at heart. For a moment, the only sound was my mother's angry breathing. Then Ben blurted, "That's not fair. Why does she get everything?" Daniel looked at him, his voice soft but unyielding. "Because it was never yours to take." The realization swept through me like fresh air. I wasn't powerless after all. I had been loved, protected, remembered even if only from afar. For the first time in years, I felt seen. I stood, my father's letter clutched to my heart, and looked each of them in the eye. "You wanted to break me," I said quietly, "but you only set me free." And as Daniel put a comforting hand on my shoulder, I knew my life was about to begin again on my terms. For a long moment, I just sat there, the heavy envelope from Daniel still open in my lap. My father's letter pressed tightly in my hand. My breath came slow and uneven, but I felt a strange calm settling over me, a deep, quiet certainty that I hadn't known in years. I read Dad's words, letting them settle in my heart. He'd seen what I was going through, even from afar. He'd known that one day, I would need protection from the very people who should have loved me most. The old house with its faded wallpaper and lingering scent of lavender seemed to close in on us all. Mom stood by the window, arms crossed, her face pinched and pale. Ben was slumped in a kitchen chair, staring at the table, jaw tight. Olivia lingered by the door, biting her lip, eyes flitting between all of us. For once, nobody spoke. Daniel stayed by my side, a steady presence in the storm. He waited until I had finished reading, then gently rested his hand on my shoulder. "You don't have to stay here, Charlotte," he said quietly, his voice low so only I could hear. "You have options now." "Real ones," I nodded, blinking back the sting of tears. For years, I'd convinced myself I had to bear everything alone, that it was my responsibility to keep the peace, to fix things, to sacrifice my happiness for the sake of family. But as I sat with Dad's letter in my hands and Daniel at my side, I felt something inside me begin to shift. Mom's voice broke the silence, brittle and sharp. "You're just going to take his word for it?" Some dusty letter from a man who's been gone for years? You're my daughter, Charlotte. You owe us everything. Who paid for your school? Who gave you a roof over your head all these years? Her words came out in a rush, but I heard the fear beneath them. I stood up, folding the letter carefully and sliding it into my handbag. I looked her in the eye, not with anger, but with a calm that surprised even me. I don't owe you anything, Mom. Not anymore. I've paid my debts 1,000 times over. This isn't about money. It's about respect. You crossed a line and you know it. She opened her mouth to protest, but Daniel raised a hand. Judith, he said, his voice gentle but unyielding, Michael's trust is legally binding. You cannot touch a cent of it. If you try, you'll violate the law. I have all the documents you need to see. He pulled out a neat stack of papers, trust documents, account statements, even a letter from Dad's attorney in London. If you have any questions, you can call Michael's lawyer. The number is right here. Ben finally looked up, anger flashing in his eyes. So that's it? Charlotte gets everything, and we're left with nothing. His voice was petulant, childish, and I realized with a strange sense of relief that I didn't have to fix him anymore. I didn't have to fix any of them. You're not left with nothing, Ben, I said softly. You have your life. You have Olivia. You have all the chances in the world to build something for yourself. You just can't do it on my back anymore. Olivia shifted uncomfortably, then looked at me with something like apology. Charlotte, I'm sorry. I didn't know about any of this. I just wanted everyone to get along. Her voice was small, her shoulders slumped. For a moment, I almost pitied her. But I had learned the hard way that good intentions didn't excuse bad actions. I turned away from all of them and faced Daniel. What do I do now? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper.
He smiled, a real, warm smile. Now, Charlotte, you live.
You take your life back. You decide what happens next. The trust will give you freedom, travel, education, even a new home if you want it. Michael wanted you to be safe, but more than that, he wanted you to be happy. I glanced around the living room, the place where I'd celebrated birthdays, learned to ride a bike, nursed scraped knees. The house didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like a museum of sacrifices I'd made for people who never bothered to notice. I realized then that I didn't want to stay, not even for one more night. I didn't want to waste a single minute more being anyone's scapegoat or savior. I went upstairs and packed a small bag, just the essentials. My favorite blue sweater, a notebook, the silver charm bracelet Dad gave me, the letter, and the legal documents. I looked around my old bedroom one last time and felt something close to gratitude. This room had sheltered me, but it would never define me again. Back downstairs, Daniel waited patiently. He handed me his business card. You'll need to call the bank tomorrow. We'll get everything sorted out. He paused, lowering his voice. If you want to visit London, you have a place to stay. Or anywhere in Europe. Michael made sure of it. I smiled, hope rising like a new dawn in my chest. Thank you, Daniel, for everything. Mom hovered at the foot of the stairs, silent now, her eyes dark with something I couldn't quite read, loss, maybe, or regret. Ben and Olivia lingered by the kitchen window, unwilling to say goodbye but unable to follow. I slung my bag over my shoulder and turned to face them one last time. You wanted to break me, I said quietly, but you only set me free. The words didn't come from a place of vengeance, they were simply the truth. Stepping outside, the Colorado air felt different, brighter, lighter, filled with possibility. The sun was low in the sky, painting the mountains gold. I walked down the porch steps, Daniel at my side, and felt the weight of years lift from my shoulders. I didn't know exactly where I was going next, or what my life would look like. But for the first time, that uncertainty didn't scare me. For so long, I'd believed I was powerless. For so long, I had let others decide my worth. Now, with my father's love guiding me and Daniel's support beside me, I understood that my life was finally, truly my own. And as I walked into the evening light, I felt, at last, the freedom of possibility, the first chapter of my new story just beginning.